Introducing the seventh fight of the evening. Fighting out of the black corner, Hayley, the Rebel Wigan.
I absolutely love boxing. I love the sport, I love the discipline, I love the people that you get to meet. And with this condition, I'd say a lot of it inside is anger. You're angry as to why this has happened to you. So sometimes when you're boxing, I get that anger out. And, you know, if I've had a bad day with pain, some people say, you know, go home, get on the couch, get a hot bath, get your hot water bottle. It doesn't work with this condition. You have to keep active. So, you know, sometimes if I'm at work and I'm struggling, or I'm at home and I'm struggling, to know I'm going boxing later on that night, it just makes me feel better, because I know, although I might be a bit sore when I get home, I know in myself I'll feel a lot better, and I just feel happy when I'm boxing, really.
The development, it's due to how the hip has developed abnormally as opposed to developing normally. And obviously, like in many medical conditions, there's a spectrum of severity from people whose hips are completely dislocated to those where the ball and socket joint just doesn't develop normally. And it's usually a bit shallow and therefore a bit unstable. If you are picked up at birth, which is obviously what the ideal situation, then it can be treated with a Pavlik harness. That is successful most of the time. It's not successful all the time. Obviously babies that go on and fail the Pavlik harness treatment, but at least they're known about. And then there are obviously lots of other treatments as a child, including surgeries where they try and manipulate the hips into a cast without making any cuts into the skin or into the bone. They can make cuts into the skin to try and reduce the hips from inside and then put you in these big casts called hip spikers. The operations progress to start doing cuts into the bone and breaking the bones to try and get the hips back in joint, get them in better orientation. And obviously all that can be done during childhood, and you've got kids who are delayed walking, they're in hip spikers, so there's delays to their development in so many other ways, not just the actual physical development, repeated hospital visits.
I always remember being in a lot of pain, having to push all the time, because we knew something wasn't right. But I just remember being in the pain and the frustration, and she always felt different because she wanted to do the things that everybody else was doing, but she couldn't really do that because it set her back.
It was horrible for me because I used to see her crying, and you know, when you could tell it was affecting her and stuff, and it was like, well, what do you do? And because I was only young, you couldn't really say like, I'll take all the pain away.
The emotional trauma that goes with that, not just for the children, but the parents as well. But it's those children who either are unable to be corrected with the simple measures initially or are missed, and therefore the simple measures don't work anymore. So you've got a child that's picked up at age 3, then they are automatically pretty much facing operations with bony cuts.
I suppose you feel different when you see everybody else doing the things they can do, because it was like PE and things like that. At that age you actually enjoy PE and I wasn't allowed to do it, so I did think, why is everybody doing that and I can't? And it was a case of, because I didn't know what they were doing, I knew that there was some kind of appointment. I remember that I got picked up from school. I remember I had to have the relevant clothing on to be able to have this caliper on. But it was that scary. I screamed and jumped off the bed and I had to be pinned down to have this caliper on. Wherever we went, we used to say to her, you know, we'll have to take the wheelchair. I don't want the wheelchair. And we used to say, well, we might need it. You know, you might struggle, you might get really tired on your calipers, one thing or another. You know, so we all just stuck together and tried to keep her positive.
That's a big deal for everyone, and even then it's unlikely they're ever going to go on to have normal hips, and so the rest of their life they're got at risk of getting arthritis, pain, disability. Kids are amazing, they compensate for everything, but at some point it's likely that their hips are going to catch up with them.
And I just remember hearing her going, ow, ow, and I was like, you all right, Hales, you all right? And like, that's when it like, that one sticks out to me the most, because I heard my sister crying in pain and there's not a lot I could do to help her.
I think she felt different, that everyone was looking at her all the time, so I think we all had to try and make her realise that that's not the case. And I think still till this day, she worries about what people think. They didn't notice a massive improvement. They're hoping that the ball and socket would have formed more and it would have pulled down into place, but it actually hadn't. But as always, that surgeon or specialist I was seeing at the time felt like he'd done his bit and then tried to pass me on to somebody else.
When I started having symptoms in my hips, I didn't know what it was at first, and got some just plain x-rays done. And the consultant who I saw, who I was doing my master's in sports medicine at the time, who was one of the consultants teaching on the course, looked at the x-ray straight away and said, oh, you've got hip dysplasia. And my response to that was, as in the thing babies have? To which he replied, and I therefore felt very stupid, yes, but if it's not picked up as a baby, then obviously you will still have it as an adult, and then you develop problems as an adult. If you're like in my case, I think they said I had moderate dysplasia. So my hips were in joint, but my acetabulum, so the socket part of the joint, was very shallow. And some of the other structures around the hip joints, the non-bony ones, had compensated for that lack of bony coverage and had got much bigger. We call it hypertrophy, so they overdeveloped as a compensatory mechanism, but obviously that's still not normal biomechanics, and there came a point for me where that failed because it was too much stress on a structure that wasn't designed for that. And for me that was my labrum. My labrums were very big, they compensated for a long time, and obviously they said I just probably rolled over in my sleep and it sheared off and tore, which is why I woke up with severe pain. It's actually quite common from an adult to present, if you've had it missed as a child, to present with this groin pain and it's the labrum initially that is causing that pain. It's quite a common way for adults to present. If you are missed, so that's kind of the moderate, when you've got the hip in joint. If your hips are completely dislocated and it's missed all the way through adulthood, which does happen, then the options are much more limited in terms of surgical reconstruction.
else have we got, Bo? DDH was something I'd never even heard of. So I think if I had heard of it, I think I would have reacted different, I would have been prepared more, and I think that I would have been more forceful as a parent from a scanning point of view. I think DDH isn't known by a lot of people. Anybody I talk to about DDH, never even heard of it. Look at Bo as if I've dropped her. You know, the operation that she's had. People look at you and think, what is that? You know, and have you hurt her? And they just don't know. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose, beat. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Yay! So pregnancy was, anybody would think I wasn't pregnant. I just normal day-to-day running of what I did at work was brilliant, you know, just operated normally. Family, home life, everything was normal. Birth was fantastic. If anybody could have the ideal birth, I had it. They do all this stretching of the arms, you know, they're pulling their legs down, and as she was rotating her legs, she found this click, and she says, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer you to the hospital to have an ultrasound. We have to wait 6 to 8 weeks because there's a waiting list for 6 to 8 weeks. So I just thought nothing of it, to be fair. And that's when they did the full diagnosis of DDH. The delay from 5 weeks to 11 weeks was due to the lack of scaniographers at our local hospital. It was heartbreaking. Family, the support we had from family, they were in shock as well, and there was a lot of tears, and but we dealt with it. 3 weeks she was in a Pavlik harness for. We had to dress her over the top of it rather than underneath the harness. But we managed. We were in the summer, it was good. We could just put dresses on her. We were lucky, she's a girl. Back then we thought it was the world's worst thing, but we still had that to come. Yet we didn't even know that. After the 3 weeks we were told it wasn't working. So we were saying, well what do we do now? She's going to have to go in to have a closed reduction and be put into a spica cast. I actually questioned him and said, if Bo had been diagnosed earlier, would the Pavlik harness have worked? He said to me she wouldn't be going through the spica cast journey that we've had to go through now. And I've had all the apologies under the sun for it, but I wish I knew. I blame myself. I should have not accepted after 2 weeks. You have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for a scan. I should have basically gone and demanded it, but I didn't know about DDH. If I hadn't known, I'd have marched up that hospital and demanded a scan. The harness would have worked. We'd have been out of it. The journey would have been over. But yeah, we're halfway through the spica cast journey now, but if it doesn't work, she'll have to have an open reduction at 15 months of age. So we hope this is going to do the trick, but it's just something that's affected us massively. Pavlik harness would have cost the NHS so little, but yet if it was caught earlier we could have stayed in the Pavlik harness, we'd have had this fixed, but yet it's cost the NHS more. You're in that for a maximum of 12 weeks, which is similar to the spica cast, But the Pavlik harness is just a simple harness over them. It's material, and the harness is on them. It's not cost anything. You just have ultrasounds every other week, which is costing the NHS. Meanwhile now, Bo's had the Pavlik harness, she's had the ultrasounds. We've now gone through a closed reduction, which has cost the NHS. She's in a spica cast. After she was put in the spica cast, she had a CT scan then, which would have also cost the NHS, 2 weeks after that. And now, halfway through the spica journey, she has to have a whole cast change. So the cost to the NHS must be massive. You know, the anaesthetist and the nurses and the doctors and the amount of people that were in that room when she first had that operation was huge. If it's caught earlier, it's going to cost the NHS less. I'd love to see, you know, the difference in how much these spica cast journeys are costing the NHS. Because if that cost can outweigh ultrasounds at birth, why are they not doing it earlier? They're saving so much people on the heartbreak.
It's prolonged my training. It's certainly affected like life in general, you know, having your pelvis broken in 6 places overall. You know, it's not small things to go through.
I think DDH needs to be known by everybody. I think it happens to so many people that why isn't it known? You know, this is one of the biggest things that happens to a baby after they're born, and it's picked up so late. You're told that when your baby's put in a Pavlik harness that it works at 19 out of 20 babies, the Pavlik harness should work. So there's just that one, that 20th baby. At that point you think, your baby's going to be one of them 19. Surely, I can't be this unlucky, you know, my baby's got DDH. And then you get the news that the harness hasn't worked and your baby is that 20th baby. That's that 1 out of 20. DDH at the time when you're first told about it, it's frightening. It's your baby. How can this happen to me? You know, it's not part of the plan. We didn't think this was going to happen. We've now got to think of a new car seat, a new seat that they're going to sit in. I'm not going to be able to bath my baby. All of those things, but you do overcome it.
Left, right, left. Right, left, right. Right hand, hook, right hand. 3, 3, 3, 3. 4 start the left. 4 across. 2 hook. 2 hook cross. 2 hook cross, hook cross. Double jab right cross. Double jab right cross, hook cross.
I lost mum at the age of 11. Nana took us on, 4 of us on, and then from there onwards she took the reins and took me to all my appointments and things and carried on fighting to get answers. Anybody losing the mum at any time is going to be tough, but I think going through that whole, the thoughts of operations and what's going to happen and things like that, it is tough not having your mum there.
I think it's hard for her to understand how well she coped with it. I mean, I know it still affects her now. There's certain things she can and can't do, and she gets very frustrated, and she still does suffer with pain and things now.
I'd say I'm a lot stronger now, but I think there has been times where I have been quite weak, and I've thought back and thought of all the things that have gone on, but I suppose you can't really look back, you just got to look forward, haven't you?
She just turned round and just thought, well, you know what, I can do it, and I will do it no matter what. As much pain as she was in or whatever, she was still there and she still did everything.
Kind of always liked boxing, and always, with the problems I've had with not being able to do much sport, always envied people at box. I'd been down to hook and jab a few times to do the classes on and off, but in between operations and things, I'd probably gone for a couple of months, then I'd had my big operation, and then I slowly started going back, and then eventually it become a couple of times a week. Meeting the positive people like Mandy and Derek and all the family, they treat you like that, you're a family, and it just makes you want to carry on coming. They're just so supportive, And then after my operation, I just told myself I was going to get back into it and I wasn't going to be beaten.
I thought, good for you, first thing. And then I thought, oh, should you really be doing this? But I mean, I think she's quite driven anyway, and she's quite determined because she's had to be. So even if she was going to struggle, she'd do it regardless of what anyone was to tell her. She'd prove everybody wrong that she can do it.
I was like, no, you're not. Because when you watch a boxing match, how they're moving about and they're always bouncing on the legs. And then to me, Hayley's hip, if she did that, she'd be in pain. But then I go down to like the sessions with her and stuff. I go with her, and she can do it better than I can. And I'm only a young lad and she's older than me, but she can do it better than me. I'm the one that's halfway through the session, I'm like, that's it, I'm done. But Hayley, no, she's like, come on, we can do this, we can carry on.
People who approach me and I say, you've got to find something that you can do and that is easy to do and that you can fit into your life without it being too much of a drama, because if it's too much effort, too much drama, you just won't bother doing it. I also think on a case-by-case basis, everyone who is under a specialist for hip dysplasia really needs to take their advice on how much you can do, what you can do, and when you can do it in relation to timings with surgeries and things like that. But I think it's important for so many reasons.
I look at her as a role model now because she's got that much willpower and that much strength inside her body. She just goes and gets on with things that people wouldn't normally. Doing boxing and go in the gym, she can do things I can't do. Do you know what I mean? Nowadays, whereas before it was the opposite way around. She's amazing, she's inspirational, and I just love her to pieces because every day it's always good. I'll text her in the morning, Hayley, what are you up to? Just doing my work, then it's gym, then it's work, then it's whatever, and it's like, well, I'm just going to sit at home all day, or I'm going to go work and then I'm going to come home and then that's it.
I live a very active, relatively normal, if anyone can say they live a truly normal life, without too many issues. There is light at the end of the tunnel, because I think there are times that it was very hard. It seemed like such a long slog, so much pain, so little gain. I live the life I want to live. I can do exercise. It may not be running marathons or cycling lots or gymnastics or, you know, whatever you decide to take up. You will get to a place where you are happy and you are living a relatively pain-free existence and life. Because I think when you're going through it, I think that can seem like an impossible thing.
I think the key, as anything, is just to stay positive. Don't always take it for granted what the doctors tell you or the surgeons tell you. They always tell you the worst case scenario, like they did with me. But I think to a certain degree, anything's possible really. Like when I tell my surgeons and my doctors that I box, they're just gobsmacked. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to stop it. They do want me to stop it, but I don't want to stop training, really.
Ladies and gents, put your hands together, these two girls. And once again, we refer to the referee scorecard for a decision. The referee scores the match 29-28. Fighting out of the pink corner. So put your hands together for Hayley, the referee.
With her determination, probably climb Mount Everest.